I recently read this article and I couldn't agree more with it. While lines of code are probably one of the dumbest metrics when it comes to assessing code, it is having a huge comeback these days and we really need to talk about it. What's really frustrating is that the greatest minds in computer science all agreed that measuring lines of code is at best useless. Dijkstra dismissed lines of code as a very costly measuring unit, arguing that it rewards verbosity instead of clarity and incentivizes developers to solve problems with more code than necessary. Bill Gates made the same argument from a different angle, comparing the idea to measuring progress in aircraft manufacturing by weight. A heavier plane is not a better plane, and more code does not imply better software. Ken Thompson captured the practical reality of this when he described one of his most productive days as deleting 1,000 lines of code, reducing complexity instead of adding to it. In the early 1980s, Apple's Lisa team was asked to fill out weekly productivity forms that included a field for lines of code written. Bill Atkinson, arguably Apple's most brilliant programmer at the time, spent an entire week optimizing a region calculating routine. He made the code 6 times faster and, in the process, deleted a massive chunk of bloated logic. On his Friday form, he simply wrote -2,000 lines, so the managers eventually stopped asking him to fill out the form. Across decades and across very different philosophies, the conclusion was the same. Progress in software often looks like subtraction, not accumulation. AI makes code cheap, and when something becomes cheap, industries start optimizing for quantity because quantity is easy to demonstrate. Lines of code are visible, they can be graphed, and they create the appearance of acceleration. So now we are back at advertising and promoting projects based on lines of code. Cursor generated 3 million lines of code to create a web browser, and Anthropic spent $20,000 to build a C compiler in 100,000 lines. These are just some of the recent examples of how the conversation quietly shifted from outcomes back to output. Cursor's browser is just glue code around existing libraries and can't really render pages. Anthropic's C compiler only works on some projects and relies heavily on GCC under the hood. However, the quality of the output is not mentioned anywhere, and everybody is celebrating the volume of code generated. But one of the golden rules of software is that the cheapest, fastest, and most reliable components are those that aren't there. The uncomfortable reality is that good engineering often looks slow from the outside. Deleting code, simplifying abstractions, and combing through unnecessary features is neither fancy nor impressive. They look like inactivity in systems designed to measure motion. AI makes this tension worse because it makes motion effortless while leaving judgment unchanged. We used to fear the slow decay of software over decades, but now we are seeing instant legacy code. We are generating systems so vast and interconnected that the person who wrote them via prompts doesn't actually understand how they work. In a recent TechCrunch article, the shift becomes even clearer. Spotify revealed during its earnings call that some of its best developers had not written a single line of code for months. The statement was framed as progress. Engineers now instruct AI systems to generate and deploy changes remotely, sometimes from a phone, with code moving from prompt to production before the engineer even reaches the office. The company credits this approach with accelerating feature delivery, pointing to dozens of shipped updates and new AI-powered features as evidence that the model works. The problem is that speed without comprehension compounds the risk. When engineers stop writing code, they also stop forming the deep mechanical understanding that traditionally allowed them to debug, refactor, or simplify systems later. Generated code accumulates assumptions, hidden dependencies, and abstractions that nobody fully owns. The system functions until it doesn't, and when it breaks, the cognitive gap becomes visible. The irony is that we are using the most sophisticated technology in human history to revert to the most primitive management mistake, confusing activity with achievement. If we don't start valuing the negative line of code, we are simply accelerating the rate at which we create legacy systems that will eventually require a new AI just to explain them back to us. And remember that, despite the hype, studies show that even models like Claude Opus 4.5 will fail in 96% of cases when their work is compared to that of an actual human. And for those that still believe that this is just the beginning and that the current LLMs can still achieve massive improvements, even Mr. Dario Amodei, who is known for his bombastic AI predictions, admits that we are near the end of the exponential.
Like, I would say right now, the coding models give maybe 15, maybe 20% total factor speed up.
And since we are talking code volume, here is your awesome trivia for the day. There is this famous picture of Margaret Hamilton, a computer scientist and pioneer who led the team at MIT that developed the onboard flight software for NASA's Apollo space program. She is standing next to a stack of printed code that reaches almost as high as she does. The image is often used today as proof of scale, as if the achievement was the sheer amount of software produced, but the reality is the opposite. The Apollo software was successful precisely because it was constrained, deliberate, and obsessively reviewed. Memory was measured in kilobytes, and processing power was basically non-existent based on today's standards. So every line carried cost, risk, and responsibility. If you like this video, you should consider joining our community where I'm posting more news and technical content. Please don't forget to smash all the buttons, and until next time, thank you for watching.